Lumberjacks open their 2024 preseason action. Dan Kearns, The Standard, Scugog. The Port Perry Lumberjacks opened their exhibition game schedule this past weekend, coming out with a couple of wins and a loss. Their first preseason action came at Kinsman Civic Center in Peterborough on the afternoon of Sunday, August 24th against the Lakefield Chiefs. A bit over a minute into the first period, Ben Robertson scored, giving the Lumberjacks the first lead of the game. However, the Chiefs struck twice later in the period, and the Lumberjacks trailed 2-1. 23 seconds into the second period, Jacob Sharp put the puck in the net on a Lumberjacks power play, tying the game 2-2. Only 32 seconds later, the Chiefs scored to make it 3-2. Then, a minute and a half into the period, Lakefield extended the lead to 4-2. Over 3 minutes in, the Chiefs would strike once again, and the Lumberjacks' deficit was extended to 5-2. A little over 9 minutes later, Tyler Dawson scored on the power play to make it 5-3. Dylan Waddock would add a goal late in the period, and Port Perry trailed 5-4 after 40 minutes of play. Within the first 6 minutes of the third period, Lakefield scored twice, extending the score to 7-4. With only 2 seconds remaining, Sharp scored his second goal of the game. The Lumberjacks lost 7-5. The Lumberjacks continued their action on the same day, with an evening matchup against the Little Britain Merchants at the Lindsay Recreation Complex. No goals were scored until the second period. A little over a minute into that frame, Cal Robillard got the Lumberjacks on the board, making it a 1-0 game. However, the Merchants would strike past the halfway mark of the period, and the game was 1-1 after 40 minutes of play. Less than 4.5 minutes into the third period, Tommy Campbell restored the Lumberjacks' lead with a goal. Then, nearly 6 minutes in, Robbie Young scored to make it a 3-1 game. Brady McPhail added an empty net goal late in the period, and the Lumberjacks won 4-1. The Lumberjacks closed out their weekend action in Aurelia against the Terriers on Sunday, August 25th. It took until late in the first period for the first goal to be scored. With less than 2 minutes remaining on the clock, the Terriers put the puck in the net. Yet second period goals from Sharp and McConley put the Lumberjacks ahead 2-1 after 40 minutes of play. The Terriers would strike twice in the first 7 minutes of the third period, and the Lumberjacks trailed by 1 goal again. However, over 9 minutes in, Sharp would score his second goal of the game, tying the game 3-3. 6 minutes later, Andrew Nacarado-Sol scored, putting the Lumberjacks ahead 4-3. He added an empty net goal late in the period, and the Lumberjacks defeated the Terriers 5-3. One-timers. This season will see a division realignment. Joining the Lumberjacks in the Orr Division are the Caledon Golden Hawks and the Schaumburg Cougars. Leaving the Orr Division and moving to the Todd Division are the North Kawartha Knights and the Lakefield Chiefs. The Lumberjacks open their regular season schedule on Saturday, September 14th against the Little Britain Merchants in Little Britain. The Lumberjacks' first home game of the regular season will be held on Sunday, September 15th in Scugog Arena at 2:25 p.m. They will face the Golden Hawks in that game.
Brock Township seeks community input for 2025 budget planning. Daryl Knight, The Standard, Brock. The Township of Brock is gearing up to plan the 2025 budget and is calling on residents and property owners to share their budget priorities. Each year, the Township provides a range of programs and services to the community through an annual operating and capital budget. The budget planning process is complex, requiring careful consideration of community needs, economic conditions, growth, and essential services, as well as engineering priorities related to infrastructure and asset management. Long-term sustainability is a key goal for us, explained Brock's coordinator Tamara Kaiser. Like many municipalities across Canada, we face ongoing challenges with infrastructure deficits we must address. Thanks to dedicated levies, the township has been able to undertake numerous significant infrastructure projects. With careful budget planning, we will continue to improve existing roads, bridges, sidewalks, parks, playgrounds, technology, and more, benefiting the entire Brock community. The township emphasizes community input is a vital part of the budget planning process. Residents are encouraged to voice their opinions regarding how their tax dollars should be allocated. Feedback can be submitted by visiting the Building Brock's 2025 budget page, where the public can provide their input on the 2025 budget until September 30th, 2024. The budget page also offers detailed information on the municipal budget building process, including the timeline, budget facts, and frequently asked questions. By engaging with the community, Brock Township aims to ensure the 2025 budget reflects the needs and priorities of its residents, laying the foundation for a sustainable and prosperous future. Durham Region launches a series of reports on climate change impacts. Dan Kearns, The Standard. Scugog. The Region of Durham's Health Department is looking to educate and inform residents about the local impacts of climate change while also studying those effects from a health lens. Earlier this month, the local health unit released the first report in a planned series titled Climate Change and Health in Durham Region. The reports can be found online at durham.ca/climate and health. The first report, Understanding the Local Health Impacts of Climate Change, is an essential background primer which explores current and future health impacts of climate hazards, key factors for assessing climate vulnerability, and why some people face greater health risks from the impacts of climate change compared to others. The report also emphasizes the importance of an equity-focused approach when assessing and addressing climate vulnerabilities, and identifies key local environmental and community features which can affect local health impacts from climate change, a Durham Region press release stated. The release also explained, this primer report will be followed by 6 climate change and health vulnerability assessments, including reports focused on extreme heat, ultraviolet radiation, vector-borne diseases, air quality, extreme weather, and food and water impacts. The Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation, MSIFN, are collaborating with the Health Department on their climate change health vulnerability assessment. This partnership will help deliver First Nation-specific health services, identify gaps, and implement effective climate change mitigation measures, MSIFN Chief Kelly LaRocca said in a statement. Chief Kelly LaRocca shared her experiences regarding climate change in reference to her time serving as the MSIFN chief. Over my time as chief, I've witnessed how climate change is altering our environment in specific ways. The frequency and intensity of extreme weather events like heat waves, severe storms, tornadoes, erosion, and flooding have noticeably increased, putting all communities at significant risk. One of the troubling impacts of climate change has been on Indigenous harvesting rights. Changes in the environment disrupts the ability to traditionally harvest foods, fish, and medicines, which are not just resources but integral aspects of Indigenous identity. As temperatures rise and patterns shift, we observe changes in the migration patterns of fish and the health of our local territory-wide ecosystems. This affects not only the ability to harvest, but also the overall sustainability of these resources. The prevalence of invasive species is an increasing concern. Warmer temperatures and changing ecosystems have allowed these species to thrive, further threatening native fauna and flora, while disrupting the balance our community has relied upon for as long as our collective memory serves. She also noted impacts to the MSIFN Council as well, including greater focus on emergency planning and business continuity planning, each of which includes community cultural and wellness strategies. The MSIFN chief also discussed how this collaboration with the Durham Region Health Department came about. MSIFN was approached by the Health Department in October of 2023. Following receipt of the draft Climate Change and Health Vulnerability Report, MSIFN staff prepared comments for inclusion in the report, which resulted in a fruitful collaboration with Durham Region staff. Chief LaRocca has some goals she hopes to achieve being part of this collaborative effort. By participating in the Health Department's climate change initiatives, I hope to see a greater recognition and integration of Indigenous perspectives in decision-making processes, especially when it comes to environmental stewardship and climate change adaptation. By working together, we can create more sustainable and effective solutions which honor our lived experience. One would hope collaboration promotes a deeper understanding and respect between our communities. By working together on shared challenges like climate change, we could model a legacy of cooperation and mutual respect for current and future generations. Ontario government announces housing rule amendments to encourage more housing. Dan Kearns, The Standard. Durham Kawartha. The Ontario government is making some changes to encourage municipalities to get more housing approved. These changes were announced at the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, AMO, conference on Tuesday, August 20th. The government is consolidating the 2020 Provincial Policy Statement, PPS, and the A Place to Grow Growth Plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe to form the new Provincial Planning Statement, and also making updates to it. The PPS is a set of directions provided by the province which municipal planners, planning boards, and decision-makers follow for land use planning and development in Ontario. They use the PPS to make long-term plans for how their community will grow. This helps them, as well as the province, forecast and plan for which areas will be used for new housing, which areas will be used for industry, and which areas will be reserved for farming, parks, and other green spaces. So we will have the homes and businesses we need while ensuring the protection of agricultural lands, cultural heritage, and natural areas, an Ontario government press release explained. At the conference, Paul Calandra, Ontario Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, stated this planning statement was created after significant consultation with AMO, with stakeholders, and with First Nation leaders. It will ensure one consistent set of planning directions across the province. It recognizes municipalities understand local challenges and priorities when it comes to building homes, Minister Calandra added. The press release explained this statement encourages the building of more homes in areas close to major transit stations, and promotes building more homes on underused low-density lands like shopping plazas and malls. This new statement will come into effect on October 20th.
Word sensitivity. I'd like to write today in regards to the misuse of the word sensitivity. This word has been tossed around like a hot potato at a cookout for a long time. Depending on the venue, it has been held up as a virtue or a shame, a weakness, or sometimes a strength of character. All these things are true in their proper measure and place. I am what's known as a soft C conservative, or small c, in many regards. However, there are certain things such as everyone's right to, and in life, basic health and provision of food and safety, freedom of expression, of worship and religion, and reasonable expectation of privacy, shelter, and protection of both. In these I am immovable. Of course, this automatically extends to all those who have differing positions in any of these areas, and I heartily defend the capacity for those to be lived in as well. So how does one negotiate the differences and still experience freedom in their own beliefs? I believe this comes from a principle I observed as I grew up, under the influence of my Indigenous dad's life. When my dad applied to Queen's University in the civil engineering program, he was hoping for a bursary to help him pay his way through school. It was extremely rare for an Indigenous young man to get any help up at the time. It was virtually unheard of for him to enter such a prestigious school and program. This was nothing new in his life experience, yet he chose to thrive. Even though he was raised by a single Indigenous, God-believing mother, among 5 other siblings, and off the reserve, that did not capture his focus. He inquired about any academic scholarships. His marks were excellent, but the system, or so it was claimed by those in it, was not open to him being recognized and supported as an intellect. Today, them's be fightin' words. However, he had a value system taught by his Indigenous mom, informing him to fight a different way. This was about dignity, which is innate from God, and instructs one to attack selfish impulses within the heart. It allows God to guide constructively and cooperatively along one's way. It was not about the counterfeit, pride, which attacks and attempts to rule others, in its short-sighted drive to personal goals without regard for the effects on others. He also had strong athletic skills, and as such he had developed great endurance. So he looked to the athletic department and asked if there were any scholarships open there. As he shared this story with me, I couldn't help but wonder if he was offended by their response to his being an intellect. So I asked him about it. He said with a warm smile, this is a paraphrase, as it's been a long time, that's where they were at. They didn't know any better, but that's nothing to do with who I am. My mom taught me that. He embraced the truth, and it made him free. They were willing to see him as a physical type and offered him a place on the boxing team. He accepted, and with this came a full scholarship. I figured, as long as they saw me that way, I'd use it to achieve my goal of engineering, and it benefited the university along the way. He had no animosity, no sense of oppression, no inferiority, was given permission to come through that. That principle did not come from harboring bigotry or hurt from others. It came from God, enabling a young man to live far past the reach of such small-minded things. What is given by God cannot be removed by others. It can only be discarded by the individual if they choose to live on something else. The wonderful thing is, the story doesn't end there. Besides all the usual hard gruel and discipline to develop as a fighter and learn the martial art, he approached each fight very scientifically. Roughly 3/4 of an hour before every fight, he would have a meal of toast with honey, an egg, and a small piece of steak. I asked him why. He explained, "When I got in the ring, I would have the energy coming from the honey for about 15 minutes or so, and after a while that would wear off. After another 10 minutes, the energy from the toast would kick in, and it would sustain me for a bit longer and would wear off too. After a few more minutes, the egg would kick in, and being protein, it would be lower key but longer lasting, for about 20 minutes. Once that wore off, the steak would kick in and give me a strong protein burst to last about half an hour. In each lull, my opponent would think he had worn me out, and then I'd come back with all this surprising strength. I only lost, I think, 3 fights in about 30 some odd. Not bad for someone who had never boxed before." He told me he studied the martial art of boxing thoroughly and drained every bit of knowledge the coaches had from them to be properly prepared. Respect for him rose steadily in the school, even among the professors and administration. This ability to turn his sensitivity to the right constructive thing informed many of their preconceived and therefore underdeveloped opinions. It helped many to look at Indigenous people in a different light in their lives forward. That's the fight. Not a fight from pride, rather the recognition along the way to one's own goal, valuing what every life holds. That's letting innate God-given dignity rule, instead of the opinions of others. Cooperation, patience, and a willingness to grow, and developing a sensitivity to right things is an inner choice. This all stems from the teaching of critical thinking skills and living with a heart wide and willing. This is the only true way an organism grows, the idea of people exchanging various perspectives with a common level of mutual dignity and respect undergirding it all. It allows open conversation, freedom of expression, and the opportunity to learn from others' experiences. The PC effort to bully difference of opinion is not freedom and not healthy for the organism as a country. Let's protect every life at all its stages, value the innate dignity the Creator God has given all human beings, and offer an open door to converse without telling others how they must talk. A spoiled child says, "I want, I want, I want," and the goal is to wear down those who have an obligation to teach the child proper respect for their own lives. This is done by showing them self-preoccupation works against their own life. As an outflow, this creates antisocial, people-using, disregarding attitudes toward others. Whereas a life taught to hold key values while honoring the desires of others creates mutual edification.
The Standard Podcast was produced by Greenstream Studio for the Standard newspaper.